Immigration has been a highly controversial issue around Brexit. I mean, I tend to be, you say the IEA's on the right. I'm a very liberal person on immigration in general, not just as it pertains to Ukraine.
The UK government has only granted 50 visas to Ukrainian family members so far. Well, should Britain be doing more? Mark Littlewood thinks so. He's the Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs. He writes a column in the business section of The Times every week, and every fortnight. He joins us every fortnight. Mark's here now. Mark, explain what you think are the economic benefits, the economic case for being more generous in our offer to Ukrainians.
Yes, I think there's a very strong economic case, Matt. In my article today, I sort of say, put aside the humanitarian case. It's not because I want to dismiss it. You might think we have a humanitarian obligation to allow a large number of Ukrainians onto our shores. But even putting that aside, in our own narrow venal self-interest, I think there's a very good reason to welcome Ukrainians to these shores. 1.5 million or so have already exited the Ukraine. Depending on how the situation develops, that's likely to go up a lot, likely to include many more men who are supposedly supposed to stay and fight. But we have a labour shortage in the UK at the moment. It wasn't so long ago that we were told that the crises that we were facing were, a lack of HGV drivers and the like. Ukraine has a fairly skilled, very low paid workforce. We have huge gaps in our labour market. I think if we were just thinking of ourselves and the British economy, rather than any wider humane considerations, there's an extremely good case to expand our labour supply and let Ukrainians in. And of course, partly because of Brexit, although we did have some of these tools in our box anyway, we can design our immigration system however we want. So I know a lot of people in the immigration debate have been concerned about immigrants come in and there are a net drain on public resources. Well, we could perhaps design visas and your potential welfare benefits accordingly. We might say that you're only entitled to certain things when you've paid in enough national insurance or tax or have a salary of a certain level. So I think this could be win-win-win. You mentioned in your remarks just a moment ago, Matt, we've only issued 50 visas. I think there are about 5,000 pending. But in my view, that's in the mere foothills of what we should be doing. I think we should have an eye on hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians coming here to work.
And it's really interesting that. The thing that I'm slightly confused by is why the government seems to be dragging its feet on this. In other areas, we've been very generous, in terms of humanitarian or providing military kit and so on. But why do you think the government is dragging its heels? Because, we've talked about this before. You're from the right of British politics. You're here making both a humanitarian and economic case for it. Brexit's given us, we took back control. That was taking back control. That wasn't taking up the drawbridge. That wasn't saying nobody could ever come here before. And actually, with a bit of leadership, a bit of Boris Johnson's famous communication skills, he could sell this, couldn't he?
I think he could sell it. I mean, the answer to your question, Matt, is I think immigration has been a highly controversial issue around Brexit. I mean, I tend to be, you say the IEA's on the right. I'm a very liberal person on immigration in general, not just as it pertains to Ukraine. But the immigration system itself is a bit of a mess, right? So it's one thing for the government to say, right, let's send all of this over and try and get it into the Ukraine via Poland, whether it's food supplies or military supplies. When you're dealing with the immigration system, well, you've got to ask yourself, okay, this person's turned up. How do we know they're Ukrainian, for example, if they haven't got any papers on them? What sort of processes are we going to put them through? How do we know whether they already have connections with the United Kingdom? Do they have family here? And if so, how do we prove that their second cousin is willing to put them up in their house or whatever? So it is a more complex system than deciding, if you like, off the cuff to provide supplies to Ukraine, but I think they are still dragging their feet. I mean, in fairness, I guess their bandwidth is chewed up to a large extent by the sort of security and dangerous defence issues. But I'd like to see them get on with it a lot faster. At least sketch out the principles immediately, even if it's going to take you a few weeks to work out exactly what form somebody would have to fill in if they arrived here.
Mark Littlewood, really good to speak to you as ever. And it's a cracking piece in the Times business section as well. Mark Littlewood is the Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs, economic think tank, and like I said, writes in the Times business section every fortnight.